Hi everyone, how's it going? My name is Wesley O'Hara. I'm the Vice President of Education and Membership for the Music Managers Forum US, and thanks for tuning in today. With us, we have Brad Desmond, Christian Fresco, Taishi Fukuyama, and we also have Kei Suzuki, who's going to be joining us a little bit later on. And basically, our conversation of the day is going to go around merch, vinyl, and crowdfunding, and some different tactics for selling. What's working right now, what works for different artists, so on and so forth. But first, the run of play is going to be just a quick introduction on the MMF. Then we'll pass it to Taishi to have a quick run through of Qrates, the sponsor and curator of today's session. Hey Kay, how you doing? There you go. Yeah, and that's it. So first and foremost, about the Music Managers Forum, the MMF-US is a 27-year-old trade association which basically represents the rights of self-managed artists and managers and the whole community that surrounds them. So our contingency is primarily made up of artist management teams, but also lawyers, labels, publishing companies, anybody in the music industry who supports managers or really looks out for their rights or wants to understand how they work. We are the central hub for that. As such, we also have taken a bunch of actions since all of the lockdown pandemic things started in the world. And we actually were one of the successful organizations in making sure that language got into the CARES Act to make sure that music companies of all different kinds and that freelance workers in the entertainment space can actually be looked after through the CARES Act as well. So if you need any more support related to what's happening with COVID, we'd recommend that you go to the site musiccovidrelief.com. So that's musiccovidrelief.com. We're also, because the Music Managers Forum is a volunteer organization, we operate basically just on membership dues and donations, and with the support of sponsors such as Qrates for today's session. So to join the Music Managers Forum as a full member, it costs $75 a year, and because we want everybody to be able to have full access to our resources, we are deferring all membership fees for the next 6 months. So you can join for 6 months, not have to worry about paying anything during that time. And then, yeah, we basically just want to make sure everybody's as supported as possible. Tell your friends, and that's that. I think I'm getting a little of an echo through right now.
Okay.
Apologies. Cool. Yeah. Without further ado, let's pass it over to Taishi. Taishi, thanks so much for joining us, and tell us about Qrates.
Sure thing. Thanks, Wes, for having us, and hi everybody on today's panel. Yeah, so a quick intro about myself. Co-founder, chief marketing officer at Qrates. We've built a platform which is like a Kickstarter for vinyl, and it's only for vinyl, which I hope makes it really interesting. Rather than me just talking about, I'm just going to give you guys a quick screen share just to give you a sense of what I'm talking about. So Qrates, again, Qrates.com. When you land here, you'll see all the various projects that are live on the platform. The artists that use Qrates range anywhere from like the individual bedroom beat maker to pretty well established labels, and all the way up to major labels, specifically being Warner Music US, who used Qrates for some of their smaller issue back catalog reissues projects. Any of these projects can be published live as long as you have the rights to the music. And I'm just going to give you a quick peek at what one of these look like. Here's a project that was run by Brad and his team for one of his bands, Magic City Hippies. Did, wow, 700 records, that's awesome. Hopefully he'll talk about that in a second, about how he set that up and how he made this a really massive success. And I'll give you a quick demo on how one of these can be set up really quickly. And Wes, I'm just assuming everyone can hear me, and I can just keep going. stop me if whenever you guys have a question or whatever.
All good, keep going. So one word just to attendees. There is a questions box in your GoToWebinar control panel. Please just feel free to enter any questions you have there. And after the panel's done, after the product walkthrough is done, we'll come back to all the questions that haven't yet been answered at the end.
Awesome, cool. So this is the page. After you press start a project, you land here, and we've made this Vinyl Studio where you can just click in, dial in the specs that you want. So let's just say, for today's sake, we want a 12-inch record. We'll press 300 of these with test presses. And I think we cover most of the popular vinyl colorways and transparent neon and all that kind of stuff, along with splatter vinyl and half and half. And you'll also see a visual representation of that right here. And if you like, you can also even upload a thumbnail of your artwork here and kind of really get a sense of how your record could look like. Share it with your fans, get them excited about, a potential release. We've seen a lot of bands, artists use Qrates just for this, and get a quick quote here as you dial up your specs. And you choose your label type, your sleeve, your jacket here. And I'm just going to go for the color options here, which I think are the most standard. You can choose finish of like gloss and matte here. Different packaging options, shrink wrap, over bag, inner sleeve colors, and such. Download card. I know that this is pretty important for a lot of you guys who want to bundle a digital release with the record. We can do that as well, along with additional bonus tracks. We host the audio file, so you don't have to worry about that as well. And if you need help with mastering, we have some of those services to offer as well, along with artwork support. So we just dialed in 300 records, chose color, sleeve, and options, and you get a price breakdown of that, and you come down to about $6 a unit. In the following steps, it comes more of like the admins type, the side of things. You just type in your artist name, title, your user info. Just gonna blast through here today. And then this is where you choose how you'd like to publish your project on Qrates. Crowdfunding is, I guess, the main topic today. So obviously, no money up front. You set your goal quantity. Today was 300. Set your pledge amount, $25 a record, let's say. We also have a program called Store Delivery, which is a network of about 200 plus physical retail stores around the world that can buy directly from your project. I can set my own wholesale price, let's say $14. Set a limit to how many of those 300 copies I'd like to offer for those stores, and run a quick profit simulation and see that after selling 300 records at $25 after costs and our platform fee, you can make about $4,200. So even although I've done this before, obviously, it's fairly easy to go through the Vinyl Studio, play with a couple specs and see how much it'll cost per unit, dial in your pledge amount and see how much money you'll make fairly instantly. And that's, I think, probably one of the most asked questions on like how much does it cost. And we always encourage you to just try this yourself and see how much you think your fans have an appetite, at what price point, what type of vinyl. You can simulate that all right in here. So after you choose your vinyl spec and plug in all of your this marquee imagery, this mock-up right here is something that we provide. Add in a nice title, description. You can also add preview audio to your project, and off you go.
Oh,
Yeah, so that's the quick demo.
Super straightforward. We just made a vinyl campaign with designs in like 6 minutes. So I think that was pretty cool. I wonder if there's like a Guinness Book of World Record attempt to be done in there. But so I think there's a couple questions that have come through already, just technically about Qrates, and just so you can reiterate, what's the kind of main way that Qrates makes money out of all of this?
Sure thing. So so our fees are 15% of the price that you set as your pledge amount. If you're doing a goal quantity, basically the pre-order price, and then what you come back with is 85% after cost of goods.
Cool. So 85% after COGS, super fair. Sounds good. I'm just quickly looking through the questions on the technical side. What's the kind of turnaround time that?
Right. Yeah, I should have mentioned that.
Yeah.
Right. Our typical turnaround time is about 8 to 10 weeks, and we start our minimums from 100. And if you're just starting out, and maybe aren't too confident about collecting 100 orders, we also have the option for you to also self-purchase any number of copies that you set as your goal quantity. So imagine if you set it at even 100 or even 300 for various reasons. Maybe you want to keep 50 of those to put in your office, or maybe leave as inventory on Qrates to keep selling as a storefront. We also have those capabilities as well. Another thing is that if you choose to store your records at Qrates, we have 2 warehouse facilities. One is in Michigan, the other one is in the UK, and we're offering both of those for free. This isn't really tied with COVID at all. It's free by default. So you press with Qrates, you can leave those records in the warehouse for free as of today, indefinitely, as long as the lights are on for us. And whenever you get an order through Qrates, you don't have to worry about creating any sort of paperwork or having to the worst thing would be to have to go out to the post office per order, especially during these kind of crazy hectic times. So we take care of that all for you, and also any customer support if that record gets damaged or lost. We have a whole team that covers and takes care of that as well.
That's amazing. So the whole fulfillment process and support process is all covered by Qrates. Totally.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good. Cool. So I'm just going to say to the audience, if you have any other questions technically about Qrates, then Qrates.com is the easiest place you can go ahead and find out about it. And in the meantime, let's go ahead and dive into our panelists. So now we've got everybody on. I'll just introduce everyone really quickly. So we have Taishi, is the Chief Marketing Officer of Qrates. We have Christian, who's worked in artist relations at Qrates, and has also worked with everyone from Pearl Jam to Eddie Vedder on product management. He's kind of a bit of a legend in the space. Kay is a London-based producer who runs something called Time Capsule Records, Time Capsule Shop, which is like a really jazzy and cool underground music focused label, which is born out of a whole lot of parties and kind of the East London music scene. And then we have Brad, who's a Denver-based artist manager who works with the Oh Hellos, the Magic City Hippies, Tom Hamilton Jr., Holly Bowling, and Ghostlight. And there's me, hi, Wesley, still here. So just to start off, let's go a little bit into the vinyl market and how everything's been. We'll frame questions kind of pre-COVID, during COVID, and what we're thinking to do for the next couple months, just to keep it as practical as possible. So first of all, Taichi, how's the vinyl market kind of been, and how's it been changing in like the last couple years?
Sure. I think everyone on this panel probably knows that it's really not a trend, quote unquote, anymore. It's been consistently growing for the last 12 plus years globally, and for us as well. Since COVID, it was really hard to predict what's going to happen. So I haven't really been able to be on top of some of those global trends as I normally have been, well, used to try to be at least. And I know that there's no really sugarcoating for this, but for some people, it's really going to be a crazy hit on physical shops and artists as well. Fans might think about where to spend. So we're really in a position to help artists with their diversifying income and such with crowdfunding. But as of today, in terms of how we're operating, we're basically operating at 95, 98%. And the appetite for vinyl, I think, hasn't really changed at all.
Great, that's awesome to hear. So when we're looking at, like, what are some of the things that if somebody's looking to diversify their marketing mix today, on the product side, like what are some really important things to consider either in checking with your audience to find out if you actually have people who might be interested in vinyl, or if you know your audience loves vinyl, what are some things about vinyl that they really love? And let's kick off with Brad. Brad, how do you kind of know or find out if your audience has an appetite for vinyl?
I mean, I think what I've seen increasingly over the last couple of years is almost all audiences have an appetite for vinyl. It's just about how much. Since we are talking about Qrates today, I can say the time in the last couple of years that I've had the least understanding of what the demand might be was when I went to Qrates and did a crowdfund, because we just didn't know if we were going to be able to sell 200 or 500, and we didn't want to assume the risk. And this was for our client Magic City Hippies, who's big in the digital space. They're mainly a Spotify band, do about 600,000 monthly listeners on there. And we just didn't know, like, does the Spotify audience want vinyl? So we did the crowdfund thing, and we set it at 500, and we ended up doing 725. And when we finished that crowdfund campaign, we immediately rolled into a pre-order campaign. So it wasn't crowdfunded; we paid ahead of time, but allowed fans to pre-order, and that was for another 500 units. And I think that there's maybe 60 of those left. So the band's done close to 1,200 to 1,300 units on the Modern Animal album, which this whole campaign started back in August. So, I mean, you never really know until you go. I always start pretty conservatively because I feel like it's better to be sold out and to build demand that way than to be sitting with 200 vinyl in your garage for a couple years and realizing like, oh man, like it's gonna be a while before we break even. And that's another thing I like about Qrates is I think that I don't know of anywhere else where you can easily get 100 vinyl made. So it really does open up vinyl to a much more niche market, where if you've only got a small fan base, but you think that you can do 50 orders and then you can buy the other 50 yourself and then sell those at your shows, like boom, you just got 100 vinyl made. And that allows vinyl to be made for artists that maybe aren't able to make it before an option at a 100 level existed.
Definitely. So Christian, and Kay, let's come to you next. Christian, when you're working with someone like Pearl Jam, what is the conversation like when you're deciding how to create the vinyl, how to roll out the campaign. I mean, they have a giant audience that spans generations, so it's, you know, demand of all kinds is going to be there. What's the planning process like?
Well, for a band like that, you know, there's a massive demand for vinyl, and their fan base especially. I would say a majority of their fans are collectors. So, and you know, they also work with major labels. So there's a lot of other people involved in that process. But for them, they're just vinyl collectors themselves as a band. So for anything that they do, even their individual side projects, vinyl is always in the conversation. So I don't think the decision-making process is really, are we going to do vinyl or not for a band like Pearl Jam? It's really, we're doing it, and how, you know, how many are we going to make? Are we going to, you know, do some crazy packaging with it? And then for them, it's part of a big and larger campaign. So, you know, there's a lot more lead time that has to go into the process of making vinyl for them, because there's big tours, a big promotional plan with lots of various partners. But yeah, a band of their stature, like, you're always going to find vinyl. And then for them too, you're always talking about, if you do sell out, you know, you're talking about repressing, just like, you know, even a smaller scale like Magic City Hippies did. You know, they went through 700 copies, and then they went and added another 500. So that same thing does happen with even a bigger band. So, you know, you're doing like 10,000 on your first run or more, and then you're going to do a second run as well. So you kind of look at that. You're really looking at your inventory, stock levels, and you know, and where things are around the world.
Awesome. So Kay, you have a very unique audience and an approach to this. You have some absolute diehard wax heads who love your collection. And can you tell us a little bit about, first of all, how you find the records that you're going to reissue, and how you decide when it's something that your audience is going to to love? And then could you also give us a little insight on what is it about your pressings that your audience loves and like keeps asking for or wants more of, as far as on the actual kind of product itself?
Sure. So basically, I'm quite in a lucky situation where I used to run audiophile restaurant. I was making sushi. I was a chef, and I also we were all audiophiles. So we basically install vintage speakers to all the audiophile decks and everything. So I was basically surrounded by all the hardcore record collectors and DJs, and because we're in the East London, middle of everything's happening in London. So yeah, after 2-3 years, we just kept growing, and audience kept growing, and at the same time, I guess we were the first of the kind, which kind of spread to all over the world later on, which is the audiophile culture, where I guess, like in our case, we couldn't really find a great venue with a good sound system, and wherever you go to bar or club, the sound is very harsh, or it just drives to drink people more. So we felt we'd rather listening to the great sound system at home studio, home listening space. So that's where our community kind of grow, and naturally that trend grows to, I mean, this whole culture, it actually started in Japan, post World War II. All this a jazz kissa happened, which is a cafe with a hi-fi audio, and basically people comes in, have a coffee, and listening to jazz or classical music really loud with big speakers. So that culture, we kind of carried on that culture, And basically, I started this label, a region label, out from that community, and we found the Qrates. I mean, I knew Qrates from the very beginning, and I was always in touch with the guy, everyone, and especially CEO Yombo. I've known him before he starts, so this was just a perfect combination for us to, for me to reflect our collectors network, because there's so many records that nobody else really have it, and only these few selected collectors and DJs have it. So, and we were a bunch of them, and from anything from jazz to electronic music to rock to psychedelic and all sort of genre. So basically what I did with the time capsule label, and also this is also coming from my sort of philosophy towards music, what sort of like music that I like and I was influenced by, which was always the music that reflects people's consciousness in different time and space. And so when we find the good records from different parts of the world, whether it's Turkey or a Greek electronic from 80s, or some West African music from Mali, or Detroit techno from 90s, we always find the music as capturing that kind of time. So basically everyone brings out idea, and since I've been making music all my life, I know a lot of the technical side of it, and I have my own label for my own music, and also other artists that I met in London, I kept releasing their records, so I knew how to produce records and vinyl. But yeah, so this time capsule and this restaurant situation creates everything kind of come together to reflect all the experience I had in the past. So first thing I did was ask a specialist that I know in Japan, he was a reissue coordinator. So I asked his advice to get the head around. I knew how to make records, I knew how to produce, and I knew how to go through the distribution and everything, but I couldn't find out the source of information, so I get in touch with that person. So yeah, people in my community giving me ideas as well as my own, and start researching those original artists and label, get in touch with them, show them deal, sign a contract. That's how basically we start operating it. And what was the second question again?
The second part is, so of your super vinyl loving community, are there any specific parts of when they buy a vinyl, what they expect as the level of quality? What are the things that they look for if they're a total absolute vinyl head today?
Oh yeah, that's definitely comes down to the pressing. So how you master the audio and translate that into actual disc. And I've tried so many different methods, and what Qrates does, which is a DMM mastering, DMM cutting, which illuminates one part of the process of pressing vinyl. So it's more transparent. The sound is more clear than traditional lacquer style of pressing vinyl. So knowing what mastering process that, I mean, so for example, when you master a record, when you create the master audio, it's completely different when you create for digital iTunes or streaming, and to create the master for vinyl. So that's the first thing that you really need to be careful. Otherwise, your vinyl either skips, or pressing plants recognize the danger, so they cut the record quieter. Obviously, you want to have you want your records to be as loud as possible. But if you make it loud when it's in the mastering process, then all the dynamics are lost. So in the end, people turn it down because it's always loud. So, but if you have good mastering that suits for vinyl pressing, that have enough dynamic range, if you know how to prepare those master, then it's much easier to translate that audio into the actual disc. And also another thing is a lot of collectors kind of have it, something like a limited edition or well produced package or the information that you need. For example, in time capsule, in order to understand for the people, for the listener to understand where this music coming from, we always add liner notes. So our first release was Italian electronic music since from 1978, and it was very pioneering at the time. So we basically interviewed artists who's 70 years old now, but he was classical musician, prodigy with piano. But when he met Moog synthesizer in 70s, it changes everything for him. And he basically, instead of going to Karajan from Austria, the classical composer and conductor, he turned down the offer and started working pop music industry, and then using Mini Moog to create the new sound. So those kind of story really matters when you actually listen to records, and having that the original information and reading about this guy, why he made this such a music. I think that tickled a lot of people's collectors' spirit, and also the music fan in general. And I think in any genre, what we really want is why this artist expressing this feeling. So in that sense, we don't just make a liner notes. We're trying to create a video for each releases, interviewing an artist or interviewing a curator who pick the reissue, the selection, and work with artists to interview and create the narrative of the story. And each release, I try to make the narrative as in like a bit subjective, a bit sober, but actually capturing the feeling, the reason why they need music in such a way. And also, that's why I'm really proud of all the releases in terms of like sound. Most of our, all of our releases, to be honest, sounds better than original pressing, because either we use original tape and then go into very high-end studio to restore it, or we pick the album song, which was it was originally cut on album on 33 RPM, which you can cut 20 minutes, but the volume that you can put is much quieter. Dynamic range is much quieter compared to 45 RPM, which you can only cut about 15, 16 minutes. So it's going to be limited, but each song, power of each song is massive. So we license the album track and it cut into 45. So nobody had this music in this density, resolution, so to speak. Yeah, we're really proud of the sound quality, and I think that's one of the reasons that people keep supporting it.
Yeah, it's a super unique offering. So as we're thinking of like marketing vinyl or creating different types of packages, I think two of the things that tons of artists have started experimenting with is, of course, limited runs, high value, low volume, limited runs, or really reducing the amount of time that people can buy something. Like You know, when you see an artist selling something for only 24 hours and it's a flash sale, that's awesome. Or when it's only for sale for 24 hours, or, you know, and there's only 500 units. Those two factors can kind of both create this crazy spike in attention from fans, depending on how ravenous they are for what you're making. So, Kristen, have you had much experience in, you know, limited runs, high value versus high volume? And what would you kind of recommend, let's say for a large artist team, you know, what's the starting point? Is it sell all the records, or is it sell the box set that's $300 a pop? Which would you say?
Well, I think you want to, you know, you want to do both really if you're a large artist, because you want to capture, you know, every type of customer that you have. You know, you want the customer that has you know, can afford the higher priced SKU, which is like the big, you know, $100 box set. But you also want to cater to the fan that, you know, can maybe only spend $20. So you have to keep that in mind, because you don't want to limit your, you know, limit your fans to just one segment. So you have to kind of think about both when you're a larger act that has a wide range of fans that, you know, have different income levels, really. But I think that trend or just the, you know, the limited window, limited quantity, you know, it's basically how you want to market your you know, your project. And you know, when I think about Qrates again, you know, there are a lot of similarities to the sneaker culture, where you see a lot of that, and just apparel in general. You see a lot of these limited edition like shoe drops or cool like t-shirt collab drops or something like that. And I see that in more and more in the vinyl culture as well, where we're going to do these flash sales like you mentioned before, and once they're gone, and it kind of creates this it creates more demand for it. If you're one of those vinyl collectors that goes on Discogs and you kind of see like you know, one of these limited edition records, like then on the secondary market they're crazy prices because it's on a lot of people's want lists and all of that. So it's really interesting. It's really cool to see. And if you're one of those people that are always looking for these rare items, yeah, you're gonna have to look at Discogs or eBay to kind of find that stuff. And if you're a fan, it's also really cool because you really have to pay attention to what your favorite band or artist is doing, so you don't miss out on that exclusive window or that exclusive merch, you know, merch drop really for vinyl.
Yeah, exactly. I love that so much. And I love what you said about the secondary market as well, because sneakers and sneaker merch drops or supreme drops, a lot of the reason that they attract so much attention is because kids will buy them so they can just resell them at a crazy markup, you know, at a 600% or 1,000% markup. And it seems like that happens to a degree in music, and certainly with that really avid collector's world. But you know, there's the artists out there like the Wu-Tang Clan making like their one Egyptian pharaoh's worth of one record. We made one copy, and you know, it sells for an insanely high value. But it seems like there's not a lot of artists creating with the intention of, you know, trying to start a larger plot or feed a secondary market or all of those things, even though a high price point on their product for that secondary market would still fuel a bigger secondary market. Brad, what's your experience been in specifically as you guys did a crowdfund recently? What was the kind of time window that you guys were working with, and what were the things that you found helped the audience and the band kind of move the most needles and communicate best?
So when we first launched this, we set it to 2 weeks, and our marketing push was very direct that you can only get the first pressing in magenta vinyl during those 2 weeks. That's it. Like when it's done, it's done. There's no more magenta vinyl. And, you know, again, talking about the secondary market, we knew that that would drive demand for those. And, you know, again, like I said before, we didn't know what the demand was going to be. So we were just doing everything in our power to hype up that aspect of it and really drive home to people that, that they only had 2 weeks. I mean, the other thing that worked to our advantage for that was that we launched the vinyl campaign a week before the album came out. Now, typically in a perfect world, I'd like the vinyl to come out the day the album comes out. But in this instance, we were like, well, let's let people hear the record. Like, let's let them hear it and decide if they like it before they buy it. So we really pushed that hard and pushed the color aspect of it, in that was all there was going to be. You know, another piece of that campaign we did was that we purchased 200 of those or so for ourselves to do with whatever we wanted. It mainly was going to be for the merch table on the tour. But we also were able to kind of do like a second merch drop with those as well, where once Qrates started shipping the vinyl to our customers for us, and we started seeing a lot of activity on social media of people hitting their Instagram stories and posting the vinyl on their record players. And again, it's beautiful, bright magenta, and the album's got some bright colors. So it looks great. Now we've got our fans kind of helping to do our marketing for us. We kind of did this thing where we said, hey, we found a box of vinyl and we're gonna release a very limited number of these vinyls. The only way you can get access to the magenta vinyl was to do it back in August, which you're too late, or sign up for our email list right now. And sometime the next week, we're gonna send out an email and we're gonna simultaneously open up orders. And then these ones we did ourselves. We did it out of my office. So Qrates wasn't fulfilling those orders. We already had the vinyl. And, you know, we used it as a quick opportunity to build our email list. I think we got an extra 350 subscribers pretty quickly. And I'm sure everyone agrees, like, emails are super valuable now in the days of Facebook, you know, charging us for eyeballs on everything. So it was nice to pick up those extra email subscribers. We sold those ones out. I think we put like 25 or 30 up, and we sold them out in 5 minutes. And then we quickly went on to socials. Well, we quickly published the second campaign, the blue vinyl. So the second pressing would be in blue. We quickly published that with Qrates, and then we hit our socials and said, magenta sold out in 5 minutes, but now you can pre-order the blue. So get over to the blues and start doing the blues. And we sold a couple hundred blues pretty quickly. And there still are some blues available. So that one, like, we didn't just like clear through all 500 of those, but we told people with those as well, it's 500 blues. That's all there's going to be. And when those sell out, we'll do another color, you know, and there might be fans out there who have it in magenta and blue and whatever, you know, we cook up next for the next one. There are fans that are going to want every one of them. And we'll just keep going with it, you know? So anytime we're doing any announcement like this, we want to try to create an event around it however we can. We want to get the fans excited. We want to build an event around it, and we want to also at the same time kind of capture whatever we can. So I think we were able to do that with the email address thing. We were able to create a lot of buzz and energy at each step of this campaign. And then we took another 150 and we sold them on the tour. We were really lucky to get our tour done just before COVID broke out. 36 US dates in 8 weeks. And we knew there was going to be great demand for those magenta vinyls because they weren't available anywhere online. So we marketed like you can only get them at the merch table and you can only get 5 a night. We did 5 a night in each city because otherwise they would have sold out in like the first week, you know, but we wanted to have a few left by the time the band got to the West Coast. So we sold 5 a night. We increased the price a little bit just to kind of help the band pay for gas and all that. And since it was such an in-demand product. And then, you know, simultaneously Qrates was creating the blues for us, the blue vinyl, and we were able to get those for the second half of tour, and we sold those at the normal rate because there's, you know, it was a less of a in-demand kind of exclusive a product. So yeah, I'm not sure if that exactly answers your question or if I just went off on a telling the story of this project.
Along the line. So did you guys ever try any tactics to make the vinyl purchasers more likely to come to your shows in particular? Like, I don't know, one thing I thought of just as you were speaking is like, say, hey, if you bring your magenta vinyl to a show, we'll sign it for free, things like that.
Well, I mean, I think it's different for every artist. I mean, in terms of what you do for meet and greets with bands. I mean, when you get to a certain level, you've got to, I mean, you can be charging for meet and greets. So that's its own thing. And if people want to pay, you know, an extra fee to come to a meet and greet, we'll sign whatever they want. Since we're talking about Magic City Hippies, for that band, they're selling out rooms between 500 and 800 cap, and they're still at a level where they really love to be out at the merch table afterwards, mixing it up. We're gonna need to start doing VIPs and charging for those probably on the next tour, but at this level, they were there and they would sign people's vinyl. They'd sign anything people wanted. And we sell, for some of my artists, we sell signed vinyl on their web store. You know, one of the things I really love about Qrates is that it's like totally hands off for me. So like I do the 5-minute process that was shown at the start of this, and then I'm kind of done. And then they make the vinyl, then they ship the vinyl. The one thing I don't love about this, and I'm sure we could organize this and make it work, is that like because the vinyl never hits our home base, we can't do signed vinyls and sell the signed vinyls. But I think that's a huge add-on. You know, I work with a lot of fan bases who love signed stuff, and it's always going to be a perk.
That's a specific thing, which is why I was wondering, because like as I'm looking at, we have a record label which is putting out a compilation album which has 5 artists on it, and we're looking at doing 5 different pressings with 5 different covers, one for each of the artists, you know, and doing like a limited run that we sell, and then holding back another amount specifically for, you can only get these at meet and greets, and they can only be signed at meet and greets, or you know, other kind of incentive structures around that whole situation. But I think yeah, Taishi, what do you have to say about how have people usually, you know, fulfilled fans' dreams with signed copies while working with Qrates?
Well, yeah, we don't have like a default option where, you know, we'll send it back to the artist first, they'll sign it, and then they can send it back to the warehouse, and then we can still, it's not a default option, but you know, kind of our DNA, our ethos is like, how can we really do whatever the artist asks is really like the DNA, and we try to make that happen as much as possible. And it kind of reminded me of back in the day when I started my career as a record producer, songwriter myself, and in Japan, writing for J-pop and K-pop artists, and physical merch and all sorts of crazy packaging and meet and greets and idol culture is huge over here. And it's a culture in its own. I'll say it's not completely overlapping with vinyl culture, but some of that fandom and collector culture, I think, translates to an extent. What we'd like to, we're actually preparing a pretty big overhaul of Qrates, set to announce later in the summer, and I hope at that time we'll be at a place where we can work with these types of requests even more flexibly, and yeah, do them probably on a case-by-case basis, but we'll definitely try to work with you on that.
Cool, that's awesome. I'm just gonna ask a couple more questions. I think I'm gonna ask like a final closing question to each of you, Christian, K, Brad, and Taishi. And Christian, yours is gonna be for creating for, you know, the ultimate collectors, you know, what is, you know, if somebody has to create for the ultimate fan, what do you want to give them in the campaign around the actual product and the product itself? Because I think you've probably seen a volume and a scale and a value per purchase that the rest of us can't quite speak to.
Yeah, interesting question. You know, it's tough because the ultimate fan is, you know, it's hard to kind of pinpoint what the
Yeah.
ultimate fan is, especially when you're talking about like a big fan base. So I would say when you're talking about a big fan base, you want to try to reach as many of them as possible. Like I said before, you don't want to overprice it, or you want to give options so that again, any income level type of fan has the opportunity to get something from their favorite band. Um, but you know, for the ultimate collector, yeah, you want to give them almost kind of what Magic City Hippies are doing is like for the ultimate collector, you give them a lot of different options so that they're trying to get every color or they're trying to get every variation of it as well. So you can have a lot of fun with it. And like you were talking about 5 different covers. And again, like Taisha was talking about the idol culture, that collector culture is crazy. So you know, you see a lot of what some of these other, you know, like Third Man Records, for example, they go kind of crazy with their packaging, right? And so again, I think it's when you know you have diehard fans, you can really just have a lot of fun with creating the package, creating different variations for each you know level of fan that you have within your giant community, and you'll just have to listen a lot because you know when you are an act that engages with your fan base a lot. You know, you see what they're saying in the comments and what they're asking for. You know, and you try to listen to kind of what they want. You know, if they want a B-side collection, you think about that for your kind of off album studio cycle thing, and you can do something like that. So I don't think there's one answer. I think there's
Yeah, no,
so much you can do for your
yeah,
ultimate.
I'm glad to hear you spitball a ton of things because it's all awesome ideas too. And I think, you know, one of the things you just touched on, you can also ask fans what they want. That is a possibility, and you can ask, you know, your entire mailing list. You can ask your phone number list if you're doing one of those right now. You can ask your VIP list. Like all of those different people have different opinions, and they're all valuable, and we can create something special for all of them. And I think making somebody feel like there's a product from an artist that they really want or that is made for them is something that can just make the experience super awesome too. Thanks for that, Christian. Kay, I've got a question for you, just kind of to lead us toward closing out. Not done yet, but almost done. So Kay, you are a producer, but are there any particular mastering houses or other people for mastering whom you strongly recommend for vinyl? And would you say that it varies by genre, or how does that go?
Wow. So I believe every mastering studio should be able to master any genre. At the end of the day, it's quite mathematical and scientifical. So if someone says, "Oh, I can master hip hop really well," then that means you should really suspect his entire technique and skill set. Because some people believe mastering can make magic, and it can't. Mixing is more important to make the sound as you desire, and the mastering is more about scientific technical regulation. So yeah, and in particular I use quite a lot of this studio called Metropolis in West London. They have a massive studio. It was old power station or fire station or something. Great building. The engineers there were really well trained, and because of the facility and the culture around it, it's just untouchable for me, particularly for vinyl. People say Abbey Road and this and that. Abbey Road is great. I personally don't have experience of mastering with them, but I recognize them more as in recording and mastering in general. But Metropolis has a very strong culture express vinyl. I think they know what a pressing factory like each pressing plant has a bit of kind of characteristic as well when it comes to how to deal with things. So yeah, big mastering studio like Metropolis knows everything about it. So and it's useful to have, like for me, I have a Metropolis, and there's also another budget mastering studio that I use more, which I can, for this one, I actually used to work in the studio as an engineer and other stuff. So I know exactly what they are, and I can give them exact requirement, and sometimes trying to be creative with that person. And as long as you have that option, you can kind of choose in any different scenario.
Cool.
So knowing about that kind of range, I think it's really good technique.
Sounds good. So Brad, I think a question for you is basically, if you had to go ahead and start a crowdfunding campaign with an artist who'd never done one before, how do you think you would just, how would you prep checking the audience for it?
That's a good question.
Test waters with the audience, I guess, is maybe the kind of question.
You know, it's interesting. I mean, for a crowdfunding campaign, you have to have people who are, you know, willing to give you money up front for something that they're not going to get for a little while. And they have to, with most, you know, with a more traditional crowdfunding campaign, you're going to offer incentives in exchange for that, right? With Qrates, I think you can do, you know, a slightly reduced rate for the initial crowdfund, which would be the incentive. But you know, if you're doing something with like a Kickstarter or like what Pledge Music used to be, you know, you're putting in all kinds of crazy bundles in there with signed lyrics and you know, t-shirts, anything you can think of. So I think you need to know that you have an audience who's there that wants to support you in that way, you know. And it's like you can be looking on your social media and looking at what kind of engagement you're getting and who those people are and if they keep coming back, right? And if it's the same people over and over again. Right now we're in a really weird stage right now with COVID. We're doing a lot of live streams and we're putting up a lot of tip jars for those live streams. And there are some artists who are absolutely cleaning up at the tip jar. And we know that those artists can kill it in a crowdfunding campaign because they know when they ask for something from their fans are there. And we're seeing with some other artists, that's not happening. You know, those artists still have successful careers. They still sell concert tickets. They still do some streams and some MP3s and that kind of stuff. But their audience is not chomping at the bit to throw money in that tip jar. So it's kind of hard to say, but again, like getting back to what I said before, I think one of the things with Qrates is like, you know, or anything like this, you want to start conservatively and you want to, you know, test the waters a little bit to see what you can get. For me, it's like I always want to make sure I hit that goal. So I'm always going to go low on it because I'd rather do that than to have it not hit its full funding, which definitely does not look very good for you.
Yeah, definitely not a good look to not finish the crowdfund. Great. So Taishi, last question, and everyone in the if you have any other questions, I think we've answered a whole lot of them, but please do get the last ones typed in the chat if you have them. So Taishi, what do you think the most special buying experience that you've ever gone through for a vinyl record has been?
Oh, you know something? I can answer that real quick. It actually just comes down to the merch table for me. You know, just going to the concert, meeting the artist, and being able to grab them if you can, take a picture, buy the, you know, you can't really beat that. And I can't tell you how many times I think about that when we're thinking about product decisions and how to create that intimacy and yeah, so that's definitely like that 5-star experience when it comes to artist interaction experience. Yeah.
Cool. Great. I think that's all the questions that I've got. We'll give it 10 more seconds for people to enter any other questions. I think it's just about everything. And oh, Qrates technical question. Can Qrates be embedded on other websites and in other merch stores?
Yes, we can. All projects have a embeddable widget with the call to action button. You can also, 2 types, one with an audio player in it as well. So we sure can do that. And I'll also add we currently have a campaign running that we're giving all projects that finish their crowdfunding projects an extra 100 records for free. That's on us. We want artists to have more things to sell during these crazy times, and hopefully that it's our way of supporting artists. It was scheduled to finish actually at the end of the month, but I'm first to share it with you, Wes, and the crew today that we will extend that another month. So please take this opportunity to think about your project and your first project or your next final release with Qrates. And yeah, we're here to help you.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, guys. If anyone else has anything to add, it's too late. No, but thanks everyone for tuning in, and thank you for, we've got Japan on here, we have London on here, we have New York on here, we have Denver on here, and it's a lot of time zones and a lot of ground covered, and it's awesome to see that there's still a lot in common in vinyl, even though we're in some very different markets. But thanks so much everyone for tuning in, and talk to you guys soon, and all attendees, have a great one, stay safe. Thanks,
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.